Okay, so we are going through these questions that what are the effects of imposing indirect tax on luxury cars and petrol? Okay, so first I want to help you to clear some of the concepts. Okay, so what is an incidence of tax? Incidence of tax actually refers to the amount of total government tax revenue, so which is this part, and we want to know how the tax revenue is being bared by consumer and producer. So the part that bared by the consumer is called the consumer burden, and the part that bared by the producer is called the producer burden. So where is the consumer burden? So we'll try to draw a straight line above Q2. So this straight line basically represents the per unit tax. Next, I try to link it with the y-axis. The reason behind is because this part will be the per unit tax, and this part will be the quantity. So if I try to draw a box here, then it will be the government's total tax revenue. Okay, and because of the tax, the price has been raised from P1 to P2. So which means the consumer has been suffered by the price rising from like $10 to $12. So remember this part, the rise in prices because of the tax. So we'll call this as the consumer burden. And of course, if the government collect this amount and the consumer pay this amount, then the rest will be the producer burden. Okay, so we have the concept of the incidence of tax. So what is the incidence of tax for the luxury cars? Okay, so remember the luxury cars usually have a more elastic demand curve because it's not a necessity. It has a generally a high price, and it occupied a lot of proportion of your monthly income. So we'll try to draw the relatively more elastic demand curve here, and we'll draw the diagram here for luxury cars. So remember, the diagram on the left hand side is only for you to learn what is the incidence of tax, and this is not the diagram for this question. Okay. So only this diagram is referring to the luxury cars. Okay, so now we are going to try to draw the incidence of tax out. Okay, so we'll put a straight line here above the Q2. And then we try to link it with the y-axis in order to show the quantity. Then we have a box here. Okay, so the part of the price change is their consumer burden, and the rest is called the producer burden. Oops, I don't want this. Okay, so now we have the diagram, and I also want you to know what is the markets. Okay, so similarly, this is a definition that I copied from the Google, so you can try to memorize it. If it is too long, then you can just memorize my definition in my notes. Okay, so the markets is just something that is harmful or unhealthy to the individuals who use it, or it is harmful to the society when it is being used. Okay, so here we want to know what are the effects of imposing the indirect tax. Basically, it has both the positive effects and also the negative effects. Okay, so the positive effects is that it could create a higher government revenue, and it could be shown in the rectangle here. Okay, so it could be very favorable for if you're developing country, because it could actually raise your government budget. And if you're having a national debt, then even it could lessen your national debt. Okay, second is that it could have a higher price and leading to a less consumption of the demand goods. Okay, so we know that the cars are the demand goods since it will create the noise pollution, the air pollution, and also the traffic. Okay, so we try to impose the tax and then leading the price to be higher, and according to the law of demanded, when the price increases the quantity demanded will drops. Okay, vice versa, ceteris paribus. Okay, third is it will create less pollution. Okay, so if the pollution have been lessened, then it will create a better and more friendly environment for us to live and creating a higher green GDP. Okay, the green GDP part you may not want to mention here because we're talking about the microeconomics, but if you're really lack of point, I think it must not be wrong to write this point because this is not something wrong, but just I think it is pretty arguable to put it in the question of the microeconomics. Okay, the fourth point is it could lessen the welfare loss. Okay, so we assume that the luxury cars is creating the market failure. Okay, so if we impose the tax that is on the goods that is being overconsumed, then actually it could lower the welfare loss. So these are the positive effects. For the negative effects, that it may lead to the social discontent as we have been discussed, because if the tax rate is too high, then actually the society may just create some noise in the society. Okay, and the second point is lowering the revenue for the producers. So here we are talking about the car producers, their revenue will be damaged. So just remember, how do we calculate the revenue is P times Q if there is no tax. If there is tax, it should be P times Q minus the tax revenue. So let's check here. The original total revenue is here, and now we have the new price and new quantity here, so the P times Q should be here. So it is pretty hard to tell this box is larger or this box is larger, but if you try to minus the tax revenue, then this box after minusing this tax revenue will be left this part only. And if we compare the original total revenue and the new total revenue, it must be decreased, and it decreased by this part. Okay, so third, it lowered the consumer surplus and as well as the producer surplus. Okay, it is not that hard to understand because the consumer surplus usually refers to the gain of the consumers, and the producer surplus is referring to the gain by the producers. So as we can see, the price is increased, and then the amounts that can be purchased by the consumers decrease. Then actually their consumer surplus must be decreasing. Okay, and for the producer surplus, similar situation. The marginal cost actually has been raised because of the tax being imposed. Okay, so this is how you answer this question.